Black Americans have a double consciousness. It was first coined and discovered by W.E.B. Du Bois, and he referred to it as a peculiar sensation of a dual sense of self that we have. Black Americans see the world through the eyes of white people. And it's because we have been socialized in European education, behavior, culture. And it's part of the dual personalities. On one hand, we have that education, that European socialization, and on the other hand, we have our African heritage, our phenotype that is African. And those two things conflict. They cause us to have a personality crisis, a dual sense of self, two people. This is important to know, especially for our brothers and sisters that are outside of the United States. They need to understand how complex the situation is for the children of Africa here in the United States. Our African brothers and sisters need to understand that this dual sense of self that we have here in America, it was a part of not just a forced assimilation that we had to have due to survival reasons. When our descendants came here, they weren't allowed to carry on with any of the African traditions, heritage, culture. No speaking African languages, no beating on drums, no carrying forth the stories from the homeland. So we lost that identity, and we were forced to embrace a European identity and to speak English and to adopt the education and culture of Europe. And because of this situation, we view the world through the eyes of white people. That's why you'll see some Black Americans say things that sound like stuff you've heard from white Americans. It's because there are many of us that are lost. We don't know who we are. We're also confused. We don't know our history. We don't know where we're going. And this is important for our brothers and sisters to understand outside of the country of the United States, because in order for the children of Africa to come home and embrace being African, we're going to need help from our brothers and sisters in Africa. We're going to need for you to welcome us in and also to teach us who we are. We lost a lot of that identity. And there are many of us, as you guys can see, there are many of us who don't even want to be African. You know, a classic example of this is when I saw Morgan Freeman one time on Good Morning America. And he was on a panel with maybe 4 or 5 other white folks, and he was the only Black man, I believe, that was on the panel. And somebody brought up the subject of African Americans, and they got to talking about that, and they looked towards him for an answer. And he, if I'm not mistaken, if I can recall this right, he vehemently opposed in being called an African American. He said, "I'm not African." He said, "I don't know anything about Africa." This right here is the double consciousness in action. Morgan Freeman identifies with his European education and socialization more than he does with his African phenotype and African heritage. And that's what you guys are seeing here in the United States of America. You're seeing Black people that either identify with their European education, socialization, the cultural adoptions that we have taken, the adaptation of European culture. And then on the other side, you have Black Americans who understand that they are Africans and they are doing their best to try to decolonize themselves, to discover who they really are. And that's a very difficult thing to do as a Black American. It's very difficult. And that's why we need help from our brothers and sisters in Africa, because we need you guys to help teach us who we are. We need you guys to show us that we are loved by you guys and that we are welcomed home, because there are many lost Black Americans and they don't understand Pan-Africanism and they don't understand who they are. So think about the double consciousness that Black Americans experiences. It's also not just Black Americans. Frantz Fanon talked about the double consciousness, and he was French. So this is happening to Black people who are in white countries in general. We all share the dual sense of self, the double consciousness. So keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out, why are Black Americans so confused? Why are they adopting the language and actions of white Americans? Well, we suffer from a dual sense of self.